Welcome into the Slobberknocker Sports Podcast, episode 59. We are here. It is a special episode. Turner's out sick, so my man Sam Hazelwood is filling in. My boy, one of my good buddies from when we were kids, teammate on our state tournament team, baby. Back in the day, sir. Back in the heyday. So we're going to go
1 point a game.
Let's go. Hey, the best year ever of my high school career, though, was my junior year on JV. Me and Sam balling. Yep. Rivers Smith as the coach. Can you beat that? No, you cannot.
Yeah. Best coach, best guy. Just he was tough, but he was a player's coach.
Yes, he was.
Those are few and far between these days.
They are. He was a big impact on me as a coach in my young coaching career before I got out of it. But yeah, it's funny, when we were growing up, we heard like he's a hard to play for, and guys didn't like him. When we got there, we're like, what are y'all doing? Yeah, he's tough, but he was the best, like by far. We love that dude. I think guys who understood love that dude more than anybody, because they could realize he actually cared.
You had to buy into a little bit of his shtick, but he was a good basketball mind. Like, he knew what he was talking about. He just had a way of communicating, I guess.
Yeah, if you could understand him, you could understand him. I'm starting to draw dirty pictures here.
Skin.
That's my dude right there. But we're gonna dive into everything. NFL. We're normally we shoot on a Monday. This is a Tuesday, so instead of recapping a bunch of stuff, we're going to dive into some of the big NFL games this week. We are going to talk some Dallas Cowboys, Houston Texans. That happened last night. It was not a good game, but it was a game. And it involved the Dallas Cowboys, which, of course, we have to talk about here on the show. And then we'll talk some college football playoff. The new rankings will come out tonight, but we kind of have an idea of where things are going to go. We'll preview a little bit of the big games. We still will have our college football show tomorrow, but we're going to talk college football as well here today. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. They got shellacked by the Houston Texans last night in Dallas. They are now 0-5 at home after going 8-0 at home last year at Cowboys Stadium. I kind of want your thoughts on the game. We were texting back and forth. The Texans really didn't look great, if I'm being honest. They were very, very average for most of this game. The final score is not indicative of how this game went, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really a tale of two halves. Like, you look at that first half, and it was, very even. The defense for the Texans looked shaky at best, and it had both of us questioning DeMeco Ryans. Like, is this guy legit? I know he's kind of like a player's coach too, but who would have thought Cooper Rush was going to do that in the first half? But I think after settling in, I think the defense figured it out, and the second half was a completely different story.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this box score here. I know what was it the first half? I think Cooper Rush had more passing yards in the first half than CJ Stroud. It was like 170 to 150.
And he was fitting them in some tight windows. He made some pretty good throws, but again, like, where was the defense? You would have thought, sure, you only had 1 week of tape on him, but like, how much really did you need to study?
Yeah, I mean, the 1 week of tape was fucking ugly.
Yeah,
it was like, what do you have, 45 yards passing in three quarters against an Eagles secondary that has not been that good. The one touchdown too that they had was Turpin on that slant, just burned him, and the safeties were both outside, and he beat him. And it was like you gave a speedster the ball, you were never catching him. But
I saw some stat that that was like the fastest recorded speed since like 2020 or 2016 or something.
No way.
Yeah, once he caught that ball, he was gone.
It's funny, if you could just teach that guy to catch the fucking ball and run a route, which is probably the most, he's not a horrible. Yeah, I mean, right? Like, you'd think you could teach him that. Like, he's got all the things that you want. He's 28, so he's been around the block. Like, you'd think, I guess by now, maybe not. But if you could teach that guy to just catch it and run, or be a guy like he reminds me kind of like Xavier Worthy. Like, he's just faster than everybody. Yeah. Which I guess there's guys. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's so many guys who are super fast that just don't pan out. You have to be able to run routes and learn a playbook. But, it is funny. I'm looking at the numbers here. And now, from a yards per play perspective, the Texans dominated the game 6.5 to 4.9. Total yards, though, were dead even, 391 to 388, which can be a bit deceiving. But I go back, like me and my buddy Nick have, you know Nick obviously, but we had the Texans in our Survivor League. We're in the final 15, trying to make it to the top 10, and so we needed the Texans last night. And there was I believe it was a 10-point game in the third, and Dallas nailed a 64-yard field goal. They called a head slap, which I've never seen called in an NFL game.
No.
But it ended up getting to a point where I think it was like a 3rd and 20, and they got it to a 4th and 3. They could have just kicked the field goal again and made it a 1-score game, or converted and scored. And it was a 3-point game late in the third. All of a sudden, it's a game, and they didn't convert, and that was that. From them that point forward, Houston ran away with it.
If you go back to the first half at the end, when Brandon Aubrey slips on that field goal that goes off the upright, there's 3 points. Then you get those 3 points in the second half, and then you wipe them off to try to get a touchdown or move forward, and then there's 6 points off the board right there. Which
100%.
I don't think it would have really made too much of a difference. I think maybe the field goal at halftime would have been a little bit more because they got the ball back, but they hadn't scored on an opening drive. So
no, I know, yeah. No, I agree. I was like, when he missed that field goal, I was starting to get, or before he missed that field goal, I was like, if he makes this, which he never misses, like I'm going to start getting a little nervous here. 17-13 at halftime, like Cooper Rush playing out of his mind. It was getting dicey there for sure. Do you think the Texans have a shot to actually make any noise in the playoffs this year?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. I mean, who are they going to be matched up against? You've got the AFC is Bills good, Chiefs good, Ravens they're in like the 6th seed right now. If the playoffs started today, like Broncos or for some reason the Broncos are good again.
So crazy.
Chargers. I mean, I don't know who they would really beat out of those teams. Maybe the Broncos, but the Broncos defense is so stout. I think Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix and Mims and Patrick Surtain would be able to really take away maybe Tank Dell, maybe stifle Stroud a little bit. I don't see them matching up very well.
I don't either. The team that they would match up right now with, even, I don't think this team is great, but they would play the Chargers if it started today.
Yeah.
And from the Chargers defense just gets better and better every game. I know that Burrow had but Burrow couldn't do a thing in the first half, and the Chargers defense with Harbaugh, man, he just is a good coach. Some people don't like him. I do like Harbaugh. I get why some people don't like him, but everywhere he goes, he wins, and it doesn't take time. He does it immediately wherever he fucking goes.
Yeah. And the Chargers still don't have Khalil Mack right now. If he comes back,
thought about that. Yeah,
for the playoffs, like there's another guy who can really make a difference in that defense. And then I forgot about the Steelers. the
I know
500 Steelers. They're 8-2.
Does anybody actually believe though that the Steelers can win a Super Bowl, like in the 8-2? Like they're 8-2.
I don't think they can win a Super Bowl. I think they could get a playoff win if the matchup is favorable.
Oh yeah. They could get a playoff win. Right now they would play. Oh shit, they would play the Ravens right now. That'd be crazy. A Steelers Ravens first round matchup. That'd be
could the Steelers go 2 wins with no touchdowns to beat them twice?
Hey, they've already done it twice this season. They've already won up with 6 field goals, no touchdowns twice this season. It's impressive. I wonder if that's ever been done before. I gotta look that up. All right, let's get into. We'll do some of our regular weekly segments. So let's go to Brookie of the Week. Brookie of the Week, the grit, the toughness, the bite your ear off award. What's your Brookie of the Week here?
I had 2, but we have to mention Ashton Jeanty every week. It has to be talked about. That dude is crazy. And starting that game, he had only 57 yards in the first half, and then finishes with 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. And that game was closer than I thought it was going to be. I know I saw on DraftKings that the PFT guys had taken the San Jose State cover, but it looked good for a second, and then the wheels just fell apart, and Jeanty got rolling and really put that game to bed.
Yeah, Jeanty, that dude, and it brings up a good debate here we can touch on for a second, because I'm a big Ashton Jeanty guy as well. I think he is far and away the Heisman, and the odds show differently. It's crazy to me. And look, I understand from the spirit of the award, Travis Hunter being in the conversation. Like, that dude deserves to go to the finals, like, for sure. you have a guy who does something that other people don't do. He plays both sides of the ball. He's a really good corner usually, and but he's an above average receiver, I would say. Like, he's not putting up crazy numbers.
No, but I think
funny,
you have to manage his workload, and I feel like they probably do a little bit.
They do, and I get that, and I'm trying not to dog on Travis Hunter, but
no,
like I watched the game against Utah. He got torched. He got torched in coverage, like multiple times for a touchdown, like a big touchdown on once. His coverage grade on Pro Football Focus was atrocious, but he gets an interception where he had nothing to do with the interception. It just gets deflected right to him, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, what an interception! He's so good." It's like, what the fuck are we watching here?
Again, don't want to take away from him and his abilities and stuff, but I feel like he gets those like flashy plays that make you kind of go, wow, like he's so good. But like on a down by down basis, is he that guy? I don't know how you could. Jeanty is just like a freak. And, Boise State is such like a fun, they're always that like weird, like bubble conference team that's not in the Power Five, but they're always good. They're always fun. It's just, if you put him on any other team, I think he's still doing the same thing. Like, maybe an SEC defense stifles him a little bit, but who knows? And I think, what might happen is whichever team finishes ranked higher, and if Boise makes the playoff or if Colorado makes the playoff, I feel like that probably has an impact on the voting committee for sure.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. I think it'll be interesting if they both make it, which is possible because they could both win their conference. Now, Colorado's got a tougher path. They got to win at Kansas this week, more than likely to get into the conference title game. And then they got to win their final week. That's against Okie State, who's been terrible, but that's going to be their Super Bowl. And then they're going to have to beat either BYU or Iowa State in the final to get in. But I agree with you. Like, if one gets in and the other doesn't, I kind of think that's going to be the separator as well. I hope that is the case because I think Boise State will get in and Colorado won't. But I also like Jeanty's running behind an offensive line that, like, who are those dudes? Like, there's not a single next level player on that offensive line. And he's just, I think I saw a stat, and I mentioned this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. It's still true. If you took just his yards after contact, he would be second in the country in rushing still. Like, that's fucking nuts. That's absurd. He's crazy.
It's cool to see a guy come out of nowhere and just take over, So I'd like to see him win.
Yeah, I'm tanking in my Dynasty Fantasy Football League right now, trying to get the number 1 pick so I can take him. I've traded everybody away to get Jeanty and Shadur in the first 2 rounds.
If some of the rumors are true, I think he's a Dallas boy, and he's saying he wants to play for the Cowboys, and obviously they need a running back.
They do. That would be my wet dream right there if Jeanty goes to the Dallas Cowboys, I have to say. My Brookie of the week is going to be an everything guy, Taysom Hill. My boy Taysom Hill. I mean, the stat line is just stupid. You get this from him like 2 times a year. You have no idea when it's coming. It's not repeatable ever. Like, you'll have a bunch of people chasing him in fantasy this week, and then he'll fall flat on his face and do nothing for like 3 straight weeks. But right,
he's always been that guy though. I feel like he's done that his whole career. He comes out in these like weird burst games. Just you never hear from him again.
Can't predict him. No clue when it's going to happen, but then it does, and you're like, oh my gosh, nobody else can do that. He had 7 carries for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he had 8 receptions for 50 yards. Like, he also completed a pass for 10 yards, which I believe he was the first player in NFL history to run for 100, receive 50, and throw for 10 or more. And
an interception.
And threw a pick and fucking fumbled. I think they recovered the fumble. But, I mean, it's like watching a high school game where it's just like there's one guy on the field better than everybody else, and he just does fucking everything, right? Like, they should have thrown him out there at linebacker. Yeah,
like East Texas 6-man football where you've got one guy doing everything. You know who could be the next Taysom Hill is this tight end from Penn State, Tyler Warren.
I don't even know him.
He has a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a throwing touchdown. Last week he had 127 yards receiving against Purdue on 8 receptions and a touchdown, and then 63 yards rushing with a touchdown.
Oh my gosh, that's my dude right there. Oh man,
Tyler Warren is the white tight end out of Penn State.
I How did I not know about this dude? He's number 44 too. Oh, this is
Yeah.
beautiful. This is why you know about him. He's from Meckensville, Virginia.
Yes, it's right outside of where I used to live.
That's funny. Okay, that's
Yeah.
my new guy there. I might have to get a Tyler Warren Penn State jersey now.
Taysom Hill Jr.
Okay, I like it. All right, let's go. Best thing we saw this week. What's the best thing you saw this week?
The Peyton Wilson strip interception against the Ravens, where he doesn't ever turn around, but he gets his hand up between the receiver's arms, which doesn't happen that often. And I feel like it's like an easy way to stop a completion. And he goes down and his hand is like in between Hill's arms, and on the ground, he just wrestles it away and gets the pick. I was like, how did he do that? It was crazy.
Did they call that? Because I was trying to figure it. We were watching that, and it was an incredible, it was one of the best things I've seen in sports this year, like best plays I've seen. Did they call it an interception or a fumble? Because
no, it was an interception.
Okay, they called it an interception. Got it. Okay. Because it looked like Hill had taken 2 steps and secured it, and then they came to the ground. It was like such a crazy play. I couldn't tell whether it was a pick or a fumble.
Yeah, and I think when he got up, I think the play had already been blown dead. But when he got up, like, it was still a little confusion about what was going on if he was down, and he tried to like pitch it so he returned it. But yeah, that was a great play by that guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that live. That was a crazy play. Yours is gonna be better than mine. I did this last minute. My best thing I saw this week. It was because also this helped me win my fantasy game, so I had to have. Geno Smith was horrible for the first half against San Francisco. And then the first play of the second half throws like the most inexplicable interception you've ever seen. It's like, what is he smoking? And then the next 3 drives, he was really, really good. They scored on one. They got stuffed on a 4th down on another. But then it came down to one drive, and they had to go 80 yards in like 2.5 minutes, and they had to have a touchdown to win it.
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to like, I think it was a first or a second down and a 3. They were on the 13-yard line, and he scrambled for a touchdown. And then my man, it was a great run, and it was a great drive. And kudos to Geno. Like but Geno. Then my favorite part of this is Geno goes over to the sideline afterwards and does the Steph Curry night, and it's like then they show a stat like as he's doing it. And it's like Seattle has lost 11 consecutive games to the 49ers. It's like my man, like the first time you beat them and you're taunting them, like what a G. I love this guy right here. Like does
Geno
not give
Smith,
a fuck.
Sometimes he looks like one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, and then other games it's like, do you know what you're doing right now? I can't. I have to assume that the sports books make a ton of money off his over-unders because he's so wildly just up and down and just crazy.
He's a parlay killer for sure, because you have
100%.
no idea what he's doing. Yeah. All right, let's dive into. There's not a ton of big games this weekend. Before we're gonna dive in, and I'm gonna throw in this kind of out on the spot just because it's the Thursday night game and it's Tuesday. Do you have any opinion on Steelers at the Browns this week? Steelers are 3.5 point favorite. Very short number.
That seems like a gimme. I feel like I would take that 3.5. I know it's Browns Steelers. That's a huge rivalry game. It's AFC. It's classic game. But yes, Russell Wilson had a bad game this week. They won without scoring a touchdown against the Ravens, who everybody at the beginning of the season touted as a Super Bowl favorite. Russell Wilson has been pretty good for the most part. Their defense is great. I just don't see Jameis Winston having a game that beats that Steelers team. He had that one game when he started and everything looked great, but I feel like that's the same thing. It's like we don't have enough tape on this guy in this offense for this season or whatever, so they don't really know how to defend it. Now that they have a couple games of tape, I just don't see the Steelers losing that game. I don't see them not covering that spread either.
So I'm gonna actually go the opposite way, and it's probably stupid, and it's more because I hate Mike Tomlin and I just love fading the Steelers, and I lose every time I do it. Like I never fucking win doing this. But I was looking at this the other day. The Steelers' 2 losses this year are to the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson, and to the Dallas Cowboys at home. And I'm looking kind of at their schedule right here. They have played a lot of bad teams. Like I know they beat the Ravens last week, and that was a big win, and like kudos to them. But the rest of their schedule, like the Falcons are very, very like iffy. They played them also week 1, Kirk Cousins' first game with the Falcons. Then they
and they
go
have dropped
beat
off, so that's not necessarily a big win anymore.
Exactly. And then you look at so they beat the Broncos week 2, 13-6, which the Broncos have looked better for sure. But I would argue early on, like Bo Nix looked horrific for the first 3 or 4 games, and he's gotten much better. So again, you caught them both early at a good spot. The Chargers is a good win for sure, 20-10, again, early. And then their other wins, the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants, it's just, I don't know. They haven't played the toughest schedule.
They did beat the Commanders.
It's a divisional game. Oh, you're right. I missed that. They did beat the Commanders, 28-27. You're right.
But again, a close game. And
right. A lot of these are tight games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look at it,
I don't know.
After getting Russell Wilson in seat and a couple games in, they started with 17 points, then go to 32, 37, 26, 28. So they're putting up some decent numbers. And if their defense can make any stops, which I think they can, it should be good enough to win against the Browns.
That's a good point. I think I'm looking at this more from a number perspective of just okay, you have a Steelers team off a big win. The Browns are off multiple losses. It's a tough spot. You're traveling on the road now, and it's 3 in the NFL. 3 is obviously the most common number. I'm catching over a field goal. Do I really believe the Browns are going to win this game? Probably not. But if you're telling me I can either take there's a chance. I would say there's a 30% chance the Browns can win this game, and then you're going to give me 3.5. I'll take the hook in this one. We could look at be watching this game. It could be over in the first quarter. Yeah. Absolutely, it could. But I'm going to say this is going to be a
half, and it was only 3. Would you take it?
No, I wouldn't take it. I would probably just say I'm staying away from this one because I need the hook. I don't believe the Browns are going to win. No. The hook is kind of like, as a gambler, I'm like the number makes me want to grab that hook. That's the only reason I'm taking that. But
I think the Steelers will find out who the Steelers are in their next couple of games because they have Bengals, Browns again, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals.
Oh man, that is a brutal end of the year.
Yeah, so this could be where Mike Tomlin makes his 9-9 or whatever you can go down.
So he'd have to lose 6 straight to go 8-8, then they'd have to tie 1 to go 8-1. It's gonna happen, baby. They're gonna go 0-6-1 down the stretch, and it starts Thursday night. You watch. I'm calling it.
I might see what those odds are and just throw $1 on there.
plus 50,000. And the true odds should be about plus 100 because that's going to happen. Let's dive into some of these bigger games here. That is not a great one. We've got, again, not a great slate, but we'll start with a divisional matchup. And oddly enough, the winner of this game will be in first place in the division. Seattle taking on Arizona. Obviously, we just mentioned the Seahawks are off of a big win. This game, though, will be in Seattle, one of the tougher places to play. Yeah. The line on this game opened 1.5. It's down to 1, at least on ESPN Bet. Seattle is a 1-point favorite. Arizona's been a surprising team this year.
Yeah.
I think, not a lot. I think their win total was 7, and they're already 6-4. I will say a lot of those games, if you follow Arizona, they've won 4 in a row. And to start that win streak, they beat the Chargers 17-15, the Dolphins 28-27. They trailed in both of those games every set. They did not lead in either of those games until the final field goal. And walked it off on both of them. But hey, they got it done. They then smacked the Bears and smacked the Jets at home. Now they're traveling on the road, divisional matchup. Seattle off a big win too. Who do you like in this one?
This is a game I'm not touching because you have the Seahawks who come off a massive win against the 49ers, a division rival, going back home to take on Cardinals, a division rival for first place. There's a lot riding on this game. I saw some stat that was like the Cardinals are undefeated since Black Ops 6 came out because Kyler Murray's just locked in. But if you look at their last couple of games, they beat the Bears, but the Bears are terrible. They beat the Dolphins by 1. They beat the Chargers by 2. They got blown out by the Packers, and then they beat the 49ers by 1. I'm not a huge Kyler Murray guy. He was electric and fun in his first couple seasons, but he's undersized. if the Seattle Seahawks can contain his scrambling, I think he has a much tougher job ahead of him. But again, it goes back to Geno Smith. How is Geno Smith going to play during this game? Because if he's off by just a couple throws, I think this game could get ugly. This could be I don't know what the line for the total is, but I can see this going either way over or way under.
47 and a half is what I'm looking at, and it hasn't moved at all. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even realize I'm looking at this right here because they got like on ESPN the season numbers. Geno Smith has 11 touchdowns and 11 interceptions this year. That's crazy. I didn't realize it was that bad.
He's bringing back the gunslinger.
He really is. He's like bringing back the old Brett Favre, the old Brett Favre version of Geno Smith.
Without the money.
Yeah. That's right. They I'm looking at, okay, so they have Seattle 45.5% chance to win. Man, I kind of here's the thing. I like Mike McDonald. I like both coaches actually. Jonathan Gannon's done a good job there in Arizona, and I wasn't high on him when he first got hired, but he's done a really good job. They don't have a ton of talent on that defense, and they found ways to keep them in games. This is really tough because if Seattle had a better offensive line, I would feel better about taking him and bagging him in this spot. But they just have such an atrocious line, and Geno just has no time to throw. And it seems like Ryan Grubbs is their offensive coordinator. He came over from Washington. He was with Kalen DeBoer and that Huskies team last year. It feels like he runs an offense like he did when he was at Washington, where Michael Penix had all day to throw, and they could just run these NFL receivers against worse corners downfield, and somebody's going to get open. And Geno doesn't have the time to do that in this offense. They have the receivers. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba has been awesome. Obviously, they have DK. Like, they have weapons, but it's just he doesn't have the time to throw it. Man, this is so tough. I'm gonna lean. I agree. I would never bet this game. I wouldn't touch this game. The only thing I would say is I would lean Seattle. However, if you were to have to bet this game, if it got back to Seattle -1.5, and you could get Arizona in a teaser over the 7 to 7.5, that'd be the only other way I would consider playing this. But I agree. This is a coin. I mean, this is an absolute coin flip. I have no clue.
I saw. I think the Cardinals on one of the books was like -104. If they had plus odds, I think I might risk it. But at that, like you said, it is a toss up. And I was just looking, and I was like, oh, the Cardinals run game, can they eat up some clock? But both of these teams are in the bottom like 6 of the league in time of possession. So we'll see how that goes.
That's an interesting stat. I wonder how that will play with the total. Like, they can't hang on to the ball long. That's a very interesting stat.
Yeah. But is it, are they just going to be getting chunky yards and scoring quickly, or are they going to be, getting a good chunk, getting a first down, and then going 4 and 3 and out and punting every possession,
No, that's a really good point.
And they're not good on the road. The Cardinals are 4-8 on the road, I believe. In their last couple of away games, so I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. They lost. Let's see, they lost
2-4 in their last 6.
Okay, 2-4 in their last 6
for Seattle, and then
versus Seattle.
Yeah, and then the Cardinals are 4-8 in their last 12 road games.
So, and that's all mostly under Kyler Murray, I would think, right?
Yeah.
Like he was, because he. So, I don't know. That's such a tough environment to play too. Like. As the later it gets in the season and the more games matter too, that crowd gets absolutely lit. That's a fun environment. That's like on my bucket list to go to for NFL games. Okay, let's move on. We'll talk about another matchup here. Let's go to a non-divisional matchup. 49ers traveling to Green Bay. We mentioned this. We kind of talked about this before we hopped on here, and we know that Green Bay. Look, they're very fortunate to come into this game. What are they, 7-3?
Yeah. They saved their season while Jordan Love was out.
Yes, he did. I mean, you could argue he played better than Jordan Love in those 2 games than Jordan Love has played for a lot of this year. Jordan Love has missed, I want to say Jordan Love has missed 4. Like, if you combine, he missed a half of one game, a half of another, and then 3 other games. He's missed like 4 full games. and he's leading the league in interceptions despite missing 4 full games. Like, he is, talk about a gunslinger. That dude, man. Last week, he only threw 15 passes, and I think he was averaging like 16 yards per pass in the game. It was ridiculous. He just loves to throw the ball downfield. But not only were they lucky to win those games, they should have lost last week to the Bears.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bears just do Chicago Bears things. That is the shittiest organization. I mean, they are disgustingly bad. They've ruined every quarterback that goes through there. They find ways to fucking lose games. They're literally a blocked field goal and a Hail Mary away from being 6-4 and being squarely in the playoff hunt. And they're sitting here 4-6, and they may not win another game. Who do you like in this one?
With the 49ers, this is basically their season on the line. They're out of the playoff picture right now as it stands. If the Seahawks win, that's even worse, I think, because then you still have the Cardinals and the Seahawks above you. And I just, are the Commanders going to drop out? The Vikings look shaky. The Falcons, I could see them kind of dropping out. Maybe there's an opportunity to take a space there. But if they don't win, the season's over. So I have to go and believe that they'll win. Brock Purdy, I think there was a report of him dealing with some shoulder soreness or some kind of shoulder injury, but they've got to figure out how to get it going. And I'm not picking this one. I'm not touching this one with my money. It looks like a lot of the books are predicting the 49ers to win. So we'll see. I think it's going to go under the total for sure, though.
Okay, so you think low scoring game here?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 49ers are such a weird team. They realistic, like, if they didn't blow fourth quarter leads, they would be, what are they right now? They're 5-5. They could realistically be, and I know you could say this about a lot of teams, but they could realistically be 8-2 because they led against early in the year. I think it was week 3 at Los Angeles, led by 10 with the ball in the fourth quarter. Lost in regulation. They led against the Cardinals week 5, led by double digits in the fourth quarter, lost in regulation. And then they lost to the Seahawks, obviously, this last game, leading in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So
they're not getting that 49ers magic of the last couple seasons where they're
right. It feels like a Super Bowl hangover type deal this year. And obviously, CMC's been out, but even since he's come back the last 2 games, he doesn't look like he's got the same burst, in my opinion.
No. Honestly, who knows if those games would have gone differently. You might not be saying this, but I feel like maybe they should have waited a little bit or just reduced his workload. I know Jordan Mason started the season so well, and then I don't know what has happened. Again, it could be one of those things where we just didn't have tape on this guy. We didn't really know he was going to be good, so we didn't game plan for it. But he has fallen off. Yeah, it is on the road, which I think provides a Green Bay Packers boost, especially playing in Lambeau. But I think just with so much on the line, they're going to have to figure out how to get the ball to Debo and Ayuk and make this game a win. Yeah,
I agree. It's hard, man. It's hard. Like, if you look at the sample size of when they have everybody there, it's hard to bet against them. But it's on the road. I don't know. Green Bay definitely is due for a loss. I thought Chicago was going to give up on the season going into last week, and they should have beat Green Bay. So it's difficult for me to be I think Green Bay is going to win this at home. I would lean 49ers here. Like you said, it's their season. I know it's on the road. They've played in tough environments before. This isn't college, right? Where it's a huge deal, especially when you get veteran teams who have done this. And this, not that Purdy's been here for 20 years, but this whole team has been in this type of environment before. I know Kittle didn't play last week. I think that's something to monitor here. I don't know if he's what his injury is. I'm looking here. I don't see him on the injury report here at the moment. Also,
it was a hamstring, and it says they're thinking he's going to be back. If he's out, that's
a big loss.
A problem.
It is. And then if you watch the game against Seattle, Nick Bosa was in and out of the lineup most of the game, and then when in the end of the game, biggest drive, he couldn't play. He literally couldn't go. So that's another thing. Like I would monitor him, even if he does go. What is he? Is he 100%? These are just reasons to I would stay away from this game. Again, lean towards San Francisco purely on the sense that this is their season, like you said. Even if it's mathematically not, they believe that it is. I think dropping to 5 and 6.
Especially in terms of having both Seattle and Arizona playing this week.
Right.
And just coming off that loss to Seattle. Either way, the outcome of that game hurts them.
No, for sure. And I want to say they're 0-3 in the division because they've still got the Cardinals, Rams. Have they played the Seahawks? Okay, no, they're 1-3. They beat the Seahawks once and then lost to the Seahawks this time, but then they lost the Cardinals and the Rams and still haven't played them. So they're 1-3 in the division. So if this comes down to tiebreakers, they're at best splitting with everybody.
So NFL.com right now has them listed as 30% probability to make the playoffs, which is lower than teams like the Buccaneers. Just because it's because the division is they're not doing well in the division, and you have two teams in front of them that are have beat them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also looking at their schedule here. Like it's not the most brutal schedule, but they have those 2 divisional games left with the Cardinals and the Rams. They still have to, after this one, like if they lose this one, then they're going on the road to Buffalo. That's, talk about the last place you want to go with your season on the line. And then
Lions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Still have the Lions. The Dolphins are playing better. Who knows where are they going to be in 3 or 4 weeks? Are they back in the mix? Like, I don't think they will be, but they could be. They have a pretty easy schedule. And if they're back in the mix, now you go to Miami, and that game could matter. The Rams game is definitely going to matter. That one at home, and Sean McVay plays them well. So, this isn't an easy schedule. This is a must win. This is absolutely a must win.
And they have Cardinals to end the season. In Arizona.
That could be the division.
Yeah.
Right. That could be the division. Okay, let's go to again, we'll break down the Monday night game like in full depth. Just give me your pick, Eagles, Rams. If you had to pick a gun to your head, Rams -3 on Sunday Night Football. They're taking on Philadelphia, who's on a tear right now. Gun to your head, Rams or Eagles?
I love Matt Stafford. I think he's probably one of the toughest players to ever play. That man has taken a beating his entire career. Did get that Super Bowl, so I'm happy for him. If they can protect him and not let him get hurt, and if Puka and Kupp are on it, I could see them winning. I don't think I would bet on it, but I'm going to pick the Rams just for fun.
I was about to say, like, I'm a sick human being, so I'm definitely taking the Rams here.
Yeah.
I just enjoy misery and making it as hard as possible. And it's like I'm catching 3 points on Sunday night at home. Everybody in their mother's going to be on the Eagles. Give me the Rams plus the 3. Sprinkle some on the money line.
Plus, I'm not an Eagles guy. I'm not a Jalen Hurts guy. And
me neither.
I'm not from DC, but a lot of my buddies are Commanders fans, so I wouldn't mind seeing them, win that division and get in the playoffs. So I'll shoot for the Eagles to lose.
I love it. No, I'm a Eagles hater. Just purely as a Cowboys fan, I hate the Eagles more than any other team. And it's funny. I have a ticket. I have like $100 on the Eagles to win the division from the beginning of the year. I got them like at plus 110, and I'm watching that Commanders-Eagles game, knowing that if the Commanders win, that's a big advantage. And I'm all in rooting for the Commanders. Like I don't give a fuck that I have $100 on the Eagles to win the division. I just hate the Eagles so much. Like I wouldn't do that for any other team, but I fucking hate the Eagles. All right, let's go Monday Night Football. Ravens at the Chargers. Ravens are a 3-point favorite coming off of a loss. Over the last couple of years, Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson have been very good off of a loss. They lost, obviously, in that tight game with the Steelers divisional game. And on the other hand, we had the Chargers, who played last week on Sunday Night Football and went up massive, blew the entire lead to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase basically by themselves. And then just a wild sequence of events to end that game where I believe there were 4 or 5 different possessions in the final minute and 50 seconds. And ending with a Chargers 7-point win and a near Hail Mary completed by the Bengals. But Chargers come into this game playing some good football. The Ravens are now 2 games out of the first place in the AFC North. Who do you think? Do the Ravens bounce back here?
John Harbaugh is 2-0 against his brother. including a Super Bowl. So it would be hard pressed to bet against the Ravens. It really depends on what the Chargers rush defense can do, and I'm looking up how they are against the rush. I mean, they're allowing 110 rushing yards a game. If Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson can get going on the ground, I think they're going to be in trouble. The Ravens secondary and defense has not looked good as a whole. I know they got the Steelers to not score a touchdown, but they still lost. I think that mostly was due to the ineptitude of the offense for at least that game. But I don't see the Chargers winning this. I don't think I would take the spread. Maybe I would take the Chargers plus that 3.5. Is that what you said? I think it'll be a close game.
I see 3 at the moment. I see Baltimore minus 3 at the moment. I don't know if that's right. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I would maybe take Chargers 3. If it was 3.5, probably more so. I don't see them winning this game. I
know it's so tough. I agree. Like, I'm looking at this. The ESPN bet's weird, and I just have this pulled up. So it had Baltimore opening at 2.5, and now it's 3 with reduced juice. I kind of think the number really matters here. I'm with you. Like, anything below 3 might be worth a Ravens ticket. Like, I think the Ravens are going to win this game, but I'm afraid to lay 3 or more. Like, and the Ravens especially, talk about a team. We just talked about the 49ers. Talk about a team that loves to give away leads in the fourth quarter. The Ravens have blown more fourth quarter leads than any team over the last couple seasons. Yeah. So,
and even 3 points could end up mattering with Justin Tucker for some reason doesn't know how to make a field goal anymore. Great
point. He missed twice again last week, and now it's so weird because he did this at the very beginning of the season, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's done. And then he corrected it and made a bunch in a row for like 3 or 4 games, and now he's right back to missing. It's weird. I wonder, like, is it mental? Is it a physical decline? I don't know.
I feel like it has to be a little bit of both. He's getting up in age. He's been in the league for like 20 years now. Yes. If your body starts wearing down a little bit, and then that starts taking a toll on your mental, abilities as well. He's going to be a key, because if they can't finish a drive and then they come up with 0 points, that's not going to be good. But the Ravens rush defense is also great, so that means Justin Herbert's going to have to light up through the air. And Ladd McConkey's having a great year, but is that going to be enough? And Quentin Johnston is always like a toss-up whether he's going to catch the ball or not.
Talk about a bust, dude. Oh my gosh, he's
looking better. I think he's still got some time, and he did have a touchdown the other night, so maybe he's riding the ship. But they're going to have a big game in the air.
If he's not good under Harbaugh, who just spews positivity, like is just like, you're never going to make it, brother, because it's bad. Like, he probably got shit on a lot in the last regime, and now he's getting a lot of positive reinforcement, and it's helping, but he's still dropping the ball left and right. He is doing much better. My question to you was, you kind of answered it. It was going to be like, do the Chargers, this is kind of my question with LA the whole season, like, do they have enough in the pass catching game? Because J.K. Dobbins is hit or miss, and that they're going to run the ball. They're just not going to do it very efficiently, and he'll bust an explosive here or there, but he's not going to get you 4 or 5 yards a carry. So you're relying a lot on Justin Herbert, and I think that's why we see the Chargers tend to kind of sputter. We saw it with the Bengals. Like, that Bengals defense, I'm telling you, that Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, he has some shit on the Bengals owner, how that guy still has a fucking job. Yeah. That is the most disgusting display of defense I've ever seen, week in and week out. It is so fucking bad. And he just keeps his job. It's crazy, dude. But like, still against that defense in the second half, they put up, until the final busted run, I think they had 3 points, right? Like, they did nothing for like 4 or 5 drives, because if they can't run the ball, if they can't complete passes to their pass catchers, their run game, they're just running into a wall. And in this matchup specifically, like you said, the Ravens have arguably the best run defense in football and a bottom 5 pass defense. So it's going to come down to, are the receivers and Justin Herbert enough to get this done? Helps that it's at home, but
2 other wrinkles is that both running backs for the Chargers were on the Ravens previous years.
That's a good point.
Thomas and Gus Edwards. So, like, they know what those guys do. They know how to defend against them. They know probably how the Chargers might game plan to use them. And, the Ravens are number 2 in rushing yards allowed. Last 3, it's been a little bit higher at like almost 100. But I think that's a little bit skewed from the last game. If Justin Herbert is not on and if Quentin Johnston's not getting open and catching passes, it could be a rough night for them.
That's a good point. I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to give up. Like, I'm not giving a best bet here or anything, but if I had to bet it, I would take the Ravens. They're just pretty good off of a loss. And I will give the Chargers credit. The crowd was rocking in there against Cincinnati, and it's never loud in there. There's no home field advantage. It was a lot of home field advantage. I don't see them having that same rate. There's a lot of Ravens fans around the country. I could see this being more like a 70-30 split as opposed to like whatever that was on Sunday night last week. Yeah. I'm going to take, especially if this were to get back to 2.5. If this were to get back to 2.5, I would strongly lean Ravens. Yeah. 3, I would just say, slight lean to the Ravens minus the 3. Yeah. But I agree. Like, I don't love laying 3 here. The Chargers have been really good defensively.
Yeah.
So
I just last point on the Chargers, they came off with that win, but the Bengals you could argue 2 chances to put that game away.
Absolutely.
And then, their defense was horrible. That last throw to Ladd McConkey to get them into basically field goal range, even though they ended up scoring a touchdown, but still, you can't allow that. And they pan to the corner. He's just like, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that's you, bro. Like, you guys haven't done anything. And it's just a little worrying that they allowed the Bengals to come back and their offense kind of stalled to barely squeak out that win. It's almost like coming off a loss for them too.
Yeah.
If you want to do like a moral loss versus, an actual loss. I see the Ravens bouncing back here. And also the Ravens are in the 7th seed right now. So they need this win.
It's a big game.
I think John Harbaugh comes to play for sure.
Yeah, and you look at like kind of the Ravens this season when they've needed to win games. They played Dallas week 3 before obviously Dak was out, and that was the Ravens were 0-2 to start the year. Had to have that game. And came in and just absolutely the final score was not indicative of that game.
Yeah,
they did. Let me be clear. They did almost blow it. However, it took them completely backing off coverage because they were up 28-3, and then also it took an onside kick recovery, one of only 2 that you've seen all year, and it got real fucking dicey there for sure.
Yeah,
but, it got real fucking dicey, but yeah, Dallas. That Dallas game, and then they bounced back after their other loss against they lost at the Browns a couple weeks back, came back and won by 30 against the Broncos the following week. So,
but that was Jameis Winston's first game at the helm against the Ravens.
That's right. That's
and
right.
They won a squeaker. So again, it's kind of like real loss, maybe not so much of a moral loss, just because it's kind of like what the fuck just happened. Just move on.
Right.
Next game.
Exactly. And it's like, and it's a good point too. It's like off of a divisional loss, came back, won by 30. They're off a divisional loss here. They're bouncing back, playing a non-divisional opponent. What do they do here? I could see a big game from the Ravens. The more I talk this out, the more I lean to the Ravens too. Like the more I say it out loud. I'm curious if I would expect the public would be all over the Ravens here. I'm not sure, but I would think so. I would think they lean the Ravens after watching the Chargers blow that Sunday night. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little college football here, and then we can get out of here. So we had some some upsets this weekend. BYU went down, much to our delight. We both had Kansas. We were watching that game, both hyped when that game went final. Kansas with a nice kind of goal line type stand at the end of the game to pull it out. So they go down. We don't know how much they're going to drop in the college football playoff rankings. They'll come out tonight. We have kind of an idea of where they're going to drop. And then we obviously had Tennessee going down to Georgia. Big disappointment. Tennessee hung around in the first half. Georgia had really, really struggled to throw the ball consistently with Carson Beck without turning it over. And he did. He got out of his slump against that Tennessee secondary, threw for 337 yards and 2 touchdowns, didn't turn it over. Georgia's back in the mix. We can, what do you think? I guess here, let's start with this. Tennessee loses. How much do you think they were 7? Do they drop out of the top 12 or do they stay in the top 10? The AP ranking has them 10th right now, I think.
I have them moving down to about 15, kind of based off what you saw Georgia dropping after the Bama loss. I also think Georgia is one of the, it's hard to say weaker, but one of the weaker ranked SEC teams of those like top big boys, at least in recent weeks. So I'm not sure that this loss is great. It also wasn't close, at least in the final score. Like you said, the first half they did play a little bit better, but they kind of had the wheels fall off the wagon there. I probably have them somewhere around 15, and probably BYU. I know they're Big 12, but I feel like they still get kind of that like non-FBS top 5, Power 5 feel just because they're newer to the Big 12. I could see them dropping quite a bit, especially because, yes, Kansas has lost a ton of games by like 1 score, and they were projected to be, a contender this year, and they have not had luck go their way. I feel like it's a bad loss in terms of record, so I see them dropping quite a bit too. I think this is where Boise State, kind of takes over as like the new kind of Cinderella, because BYU, like I said, they are a Big 12 team, but they don't feel like it. I feel like this is kind of where
they don't
State flips in as like the other guy's, favorite team or your other favorite team kind of thing. So I see both of them dropping pretty far, honestly.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I was interested to see what you talked about a second ago, which is when Georgia dropped their second game, how far they actually dropped. Because I was having this discussion with Turner the other day, like a couple weeks back, about like if Texas goes into that final game and they have 1 loss and they lose to A&M, what, like, realistically, what's the farthest they could drop? But then I was like, there's no way they drop out of the top 12. But shit, they dropped Georgia from 3 to 12 and out of the playoff bracket. So I agree with you in the sense that, like, if they keep with the trend of what they've done, I agree. Tennessee is going to drop more. They only have and it's the funny because when I looked at the AP rankings yesterday and they came out, I forget what day they come out, Sunday night or Monday morning, and I was like expecting Tennessee to be like 13 around there, and they were 10, and I was like, how do they only drop to 10? Like, to me, I'm not a big Miami guy, and again, I get Boise State. I get Boise State plays in the Mountain West, but I would have dropped Tennessee below both of them. That and the AP poll, they have Miami and Boise State behind them. I think you could make an argument for SMU as well. Maybe BYU as well. Like, I don't know. I agree. I'm super low on this Tennessee team. I think it's going to work itself out. I think Tennessee will lose their last game to Vanderbilt. I mentioned this to you off air. I think Vanderbilt's really good. It's a rivalry game, and I think Tennessee will end up dropping. But to me, it's going to be really shitty if we look at the rankings tonight and Tennessee is like 10th or 11th, because that means if they just win their last 2 games, they're almost certainly in the playoff, and that's garbage to me. I just don't think they deserve to be in the playoff. They've looked so underwhelming this season. And as for BYU, I think you hit it on the head. I think they're going to drop significantly too, because yes, they're a Big 12 team, but my feeling the whole way was if BYU goes undefeated in the regular season and loses in the Big 12 championship game, they will get in the playoff. But if they lose once and then lose in the Big 12, they will not make it. And so my feeling is, if that's true, they'll be out of the top 12 and they'll probably drop. They have them at 14 here.
They're 14 now.
14. So I could see them dropping. I could see them right around 14. Like, they were 6 going into this week, and then they drop this. They have them at 14 here. I think that's probably where they'll be. I actually think they might have A&M above BYU. I think they're kind of high on A&M.
I was going to say, like, the teams behind them, A&M have won. Colorado's won their last 4. Clemson's won their last 2. Army's undefeated on the year. And then South Carolina got that win over Mizzou. I feel like maybe South Carolina is the outlier in terms of who they fall behind, but I think they could drop as far as Army. And, this is getting into a little bit of conspiracy theory, but if you rank Army a little bit higher, now you've got this even bigger matchup of Army Notre Dame, and you can, flaunt, number 13 Army versus number 18 just to get some ratings, get some buzz. sports books probably affects their lines. I could see some finagling behind the scenes.
I agree with you 100%. It's interesting to see, because I think the number, and I haven't looked this morning, but I think I saw the number Army versus Notre Dame. Was it 14? Notre Dame was a 14-point favorite. I think that's what I saw. So
I saw double digits the last time I looked. Can't remember the exact number, but
okay. So let's say that's around what Navy Notre Dame closed.
Yeah.
At the time, there was a higher opinion of Navy. I thought that line would be higher. I just thought because the line was around 14, they played this same exact team earlier this season, and they smacked them, that this line would be 18, 19, 20, and it's 14. I was surprised. Question here for you, because I thought you brought this up, and this is a good thing to discuss for the rankings. Okay, let's say Army beats Notre Dame this week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question number one, is Notre Dame 100% out no matter what if they lose to
Army? They have to be. Who have they beaten?
I agree.
They literally, the only ranked teams that they beat were A&M early, and that's like a classic A&M performance.
First game of the season, too. Yeah. First game of the season.
All the hype around them, and they just blow it. And then they beat Navy, but Navy's not ranked anymore. They lost to Northern Illinois, which was terrible. They beat a Louisville team that was ranked at the time, but who is now unranked and were severely overrated.
Louisville lost to Stanford this week.
Yeah. And Florida State, obviously, that's like you're playing a team of toddlers. I think that's not even a real team. And then Virginia, like their strength of schedule,
special ed team. Oh, you know what that team is like? You know what Florida State's like? Coach, remember, Andrew Brewer used to coach before he coached at Alamo Heights. He coached at the Winston School for the deaf and the blind. That's what that team is like. Shout out Andrew Brewer for coaching the deaf kids. I bet you did a great job, Andrew.
They haven't beat anybody. If they lose this game, they're out. They have to be out.
I'm with you 100%. Like everything you said is exactly what I've been spouting for. I said this to Turner. I was like, I don't even want them to be in with one loss. Like the fact that they lost to fucking Northern Illinois makes me so angry. They played fucking nobody. If they didn't have that A&M win on the schedule, they would not be in the playoff. Like they wouldn't. It's just that win is like, well, see, we beat an SEC team on the road. Yeah, because you beat them week 1, and then you lost to fucking Northern Illinois. I would love it if Army got in. That would be awesome. Now, here's my question to you. Number 2, Army beats Notre Dame. Okay. Both Army and Boise State win out and win their conferences. Do both of them get in? Because in order for that to happen, one of them would have to be ranked in the top 11. And even then, I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm wrong. Both of them would have to be in the top 12. They would both have to be in the top 12 for that to happen, because the 5th conference champion would get the other bye, and then the other one would have to get in as an at-large team, right? They wouldn't get an auto bid. So I guess my question is, looking at this, does Army going undefeated and winning their conference championship jump them into the top 11?
It's a tough question. It kind of depends on a couple things. How many SEC schools get in? Right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the top 10. Tennessee is obviously that 5th one who's probably going to drop. But you could see A&M maybe moving up into that top 10, maybe top 12, how that ranks out. If Tulane, they only have 1 game left. So if they win their last game and stay ranked, right now they're number 20, Army do they have a championship game for the American Athletic?
Yeah, it's already set. It is Army Tulane no matter what happens the last week.
So if Tulane wins and stays ranked and then Army beats them in the championship game, I think that's a big chip for them, considering they haven't really beaten anybody unless they beat Notre Dame. Otherwise, Boise State played Oregon really well. They've steamrolled the rest of these kids and these guys and these teams. You have a Heisman contender that I assume you would want for eyes on the game. Plus, it's an underdog. They're going to be probably underdogs in any game they play in the playoffs. I think they could. I think it'd be a cool storyline. I think people would be more interested just to be like, I'm tired of watching the SEC in the playoffs. Like,
Right.
give us your two best teams and call it a day.
Sure.
I think it's maybe a long shot, but I think it's possible for sure.
I was looking at this. I'm the type of guy who would be like, yes, put Army in. Like, I would love for Army to be in. My only thing is, I'm like, if I was playing devil's advocate to myself, is like, if they do beat Notre Dame, I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. They beat Lehigh,
Yeah, they beat
FAU, who just fired their coach, Rice, who has like 3 wins, Temple, who might be the worst team in college football, Tulsa, who's fucking atrocious, UAB, who is awful, East Carolina is like okay, Air Force, North Texas, and if anybody watched the North Texas game, they absolutely should have lost that game. I know the score is 14-3, but they absolutely should have lost that game. There was a ridiculous overturned touchdown. North Texas had the ball inside the 5-yard line 4 times and came away with 0 points.
That's absurd.
Crazy. And then they will have beaten UTSA and Navy. Now they will add the Tulane win if they won that.
Yeah, that's why it's key.
Right. And I think that win probably puts them in. Like, how do you leave a team that goes 13-0 out of a 12-team playoff is going to be the argument. I don't think you can either, especially if they beat Notre Dame. Now, obviously, they lose Notre Dame this week. This is all a moot point. They're out. It doesn't matter what happens. But if they win out, I think they're going to get in. I think they would get in. And then you're going to have this big debate, too, of like, if the SEC doesn't work itself out, and it's like, do we have a 5th SEC team in or undefeated 13-0 Army team? And if we do have a 5th, if we do leave that SEC team out and there's 5 SEC teams and they all have 2 losses, how do you determine which one doesn't make it? It's going to be an absolute clusterfuck. I would love it if this happened.
On the flip side, though, you have Boise State, who has 2 ranked wins. One was against Washington State, who's going to fall out of the top 25 this week. And then UNLV, who I think is still going to be ranked because I don't think they lost, but that's still only 2 ranked wins, one of which won't be ranked at the end of the year. Yes, they played Oregon close, but then you have Portland State, Utah State, Hawaii, Nevada, San Diego State. They finished the year with Wyoming and Oregon State. So, I mean, unless they blow those teams out of the water, that could be a detriment to them. And then on the SEC front, I almost feel like depending on how this goes, now that this is the expanded playoff picture, depending on how this goes, the SEC may have like dug their own grave in terms of getting championships, because if they spend all season beating each other up and they can only take a couple teams because maybe everybody has 2 or 3 losses, depending on how the rest of the games go in other conferences, they're going to lose teams in the picture because they're all beating each other.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like, it almost feels like the Big East in college basketball, like the old Big East, where they used to be so fucking good in the regular season, but it was such a grind every night that usually a Big East team didn't win the title. Like, that's kind of what happened. And I agree. Like you look at it, it's crazy. Now that they've added Texas and Oklahoma, and it's become this super conference where it's not just divisions and one side is stacked and the other's not. There's only one team left right now that can finish with 1 loss, and that's Texas. And honestly, I'm a huge Texas guy. I would be surprised because they would have to win against A&M on the road and then win a neutral SEC title game that last game. Now, I think Texas is going to get in regardless as long as they beat Kentucky this week. But I agree with you 100%. Like, they may have made this really hard, because this kind of brings up a good point. It's like, okay, what is it better? Is it better to have a conference like the Big Ten where Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, like, they don't beat each other up? And I know Indiana's an outlier, but normally you'd say, okay, no, they haven't. And I want to get to them here in a second for sure. Playing Ohio State this week, because they're finally going to play somebody this week. But you like that team, let's say Indiana's normally like a Michigan, right? Like, that's the other team that's probably normally good. So Michigan State used to be really good. So you'd find 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten, but the bottom of the Big Ten, the middle of the bottom is shit. And it's so bad. And it's like, and I guess I'm kind of curious, like, your thoughts on this. Do you think it's fair? And I think you kind of already answered this for me. Is it fair because I don't know how you do this otherwise. Like, to me, I'm sitting here looking at it and I'm like, how do you put a team with 2 or 3 losses above a team with 1 or 0 losses? But then you look at their schedule and it's just very hard to equate the two. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think they have to do something about this where it's like they're should it, okay, I guess I'm kind of babbling here, but my question to you is this: should they just take the 12 highest ranked teams and not worry about conference champs and not worry about conferences and not worry about wins and losses, and it's just the best 12? Or is the system they have now better?
If you take away the conference championship automatic seeds, it's almost like what do you play that game for? So maybe you just like delete that game, but you're losing a lot of money, so that'll never happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sucks because it's with basketball, at least there's so many more conferences that are considered that get, the auto bids, and there's just more seeds for teams to get in that are, on the bubble or whatever you want to call it. I think if you win your conference and you win the championship game, I think you should get in. So I wouldn't want to see that go away, but it does kind of leave that weird question of like, okay, well, does the American Athletic Conference championship hold the same weight as the SEC? Obviously not.
Exactly.
And it could get dicey. And then I think you also have to kind of go back and look at the last couple of years. Like, remember when Cincinnati was undefeated and they're like, you got to put us in the playoff, and then they did, and it was just terrible. And then TCU get blown out against Georgia a couple of years ago. Yep. They don't. When you go through that season of getting beat up and that toughness that you have to get through the SEC, and you get to the end of the year, you have a little something that the other teams, I don't think they have. And it's going to come back to bite them. And I don't know if the committee takes, they're not supposed to take into last year's consideration, but you have to assume that they're going to, because these games matter. They need, viewers, they need power ratings, they need all this stuff to happen. And if you throw in a team like, Cincinnati from a couple of years ago, that yes, they were ranked, but they were out of their depths in terms of talent and team. I think this will be a good barometer to see how this is going to go in the future, depending on how many SEC teams they put in, how many Big Ten teams they get in. But I think it's going to be I think some teams are going to get hurt and expect to go in and not. But we'll have to see. But like another thing, if Texas gets to the championship game, depending on how this plays out, if they get to the game at A&M and are a lock for the championship game, and A&M loses next week, but then beats Texas, do you then put a 3-loss A&M team with a number, 1 SEC team ranked win into the playoff versus a Boise State or an Army or whatever? Like, how are they going to play all that out? It really, it comes down to who beats who in the SEC, honestly.
It does. And you look at it, what's so crazy, I think everything you said, like, you made some really, really good points there. And what makes it so crazy too is like you look at some of these, okay, like Alabama beat Georgia, but lost to Tennessee. Tennessee beat Alabama, but lost to Georgia.
Yep.
And Georgia beat Tennessee, but lost to Alabama. Ole Miss beat Georgia. Like, Texas lost to Georgia and didn't play Alabama, Ole Miss, or Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, how do they weight this?
Yeah.
Like, what? Because it's one thing where like last year where it was like, okay, it was kind of coming down to Florida State, Texas, Alabama for 2 spots. And it was like, okay, well, you can't put Alabama ahead of Texas because Texas went into Tuscaloosa and beat them. And that was very simple, right? Like, simple. One team A beat team B on their home field, and that they can't, they have the same record. They cannot be weighted ahead of them.
Yeah.
But when you have 4 teams who didn't all play each other, but 3 of them did, and then you add in Texas there, it's like, how do you weight these things? And like you said, we're going to get the good part about all this is we're going to get an answer to at least the baseline of what to expect going forward. We just have no idea right now. Like, they may, like, we'll, especially, and this can bring up the next topic real quick, which is Indiana's going to Ohio State, and it's like, we have no idea how they're going to weight an Indiana loss at Ohio State. Like, if Indiana wins, obviously they're in. But if Indiana loses this game,
I see them out.
You see that? So you think no matter how, what does it matter how they lose the game? Like, what if they lose by a field goal in overtime?
If it's so tough because they have played literally nobody. I think their best win, I have it here, is like they beat Illinois when they were ranked, but Illinois was way overranked.
Yeah.
I don't see them doing anything. if they keep the game within 3 points, and like you said, losing a time expiring field goal or an overtime,
Right.
maybe. But then again, it comes back to like, does Army win? Does Boise State win out?
Right.
Does the SEC, cause more chaos? I don't think you could put in a one-loss Indiana team who had gotten blown out by Ohio State anywhere near the playoffs.
I think I agree. I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think just from what I think they're going to do, my feeling is if this game is remotely close, they're going to put Indiana in. That's my guess. That's just my feeling. I don't know that for a fact, obviously. My feeling is like if they let's say this is close the whole game, even if Ohio State wins by like 14, but it's like a really like closely contested game. Like maybe Ohio State scores late, they're up 7, and it's like Indiana's trying to get a stop to get the ball back, and they score.
Yeah.
I could see that. If they get their doors blown off, like if they go in and it's 28-0 in the first half, then I would be surprised to see the committee keep them in, because everybody's going to be like, well, see, we told you they didn't play anybody. Like, it's going to be very simple. And plus, to me, okay, now I'm saying this out loud, and the one thing I will say against my own point is, to me, I think you're right. And the money aspect is like, do they really want fucking Indiana in the playoff? And the answer is no. It's like, if we have an option of having like a 2-loss Alabama or a 2-loss Tennessee, and we're going to get to watch them as in that fan base as opposed to Indiana, they're going to leave Indiana out every single time. But then you get to the other part of like, well, then how do you put Penn State in with 1 loss? That's my other, like, I think right now Indiana deserves to be ranked ahead of Penn State. Not because I think Indiana's great, but I think Penn State played just as weak of a schedule, maybe not as weak, but close to. And the only game they played, they fucking lost at home to Ohio State.
Again, Penn State beat Illinois when they were ranked, and Illinois is not ranked anymore. Or if they are, they're like, bottom 24, 25.
I don't think they are ranked.
They're overrated. They're not good.
They're not good.
They're not good. So that's like a bad win. Yes, they played Ohio State close for almost the whole game and then just couldn't do it. They James Franklin'd it. Like, it's just I'm not high on Penn State either. The Big Ten, I think, is Oregon, Ohio State. And like I told you the other day, I think Oregon has to be one of the weakest number 1 unbeaten teams I have ever seen. They should have like 3 losses by now.
Yeah, they should. They should have lost to Boise State. It took 2 kick return touchdowns to win that game on a walk-off field goal. They absolutely should have lost that game. They very well could have lost this last week to a bad Wisconsin team. I completely agree. I do. Obviously, I'm in the betting space. I would power rate 5 teams ahead of I would make Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss. All of them in my power rankings would be a favorite on a neutral field over Oregon at this very moment. That's just what I would make. I'm so low on Oregon. I think Dylan Gabriel, we didn't even mention him in the Heisman. He was the second favorite. He's fucking horrible, man. He is so bad. I can't fucking believe that shit, man. It's so frustrating.
I think they're gonna have to choose one or the other depending on what happens with Penn State and Indiana. If they are both 1 loss, or if Indiana wins, I don't think they can take Penn State and Indiana. I think they have to take Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon. And one of those teams is going to drop. Both could drop, honestly.
Question then.
One of them's got to go.
What if, and I already know what they will do. What if Indiana beats Ohio State? Does Ohio State deserve to be in the playoff?
I think Penn State drops.
You think Penn State would drop?
Because Ohio State beat Penn State.
But then they have 2 losses.
I know, but against the number 1 team, and then what is now currently ranked, number 4, number 5?
Number 5, and they would actually jump. If they beat Ohio State, they'd be like 3, probably.
Yeah, I think that those 2 losses look better than what Penn State's strength of schedule and record is.
Look, I'm 100% with you. Like, Penn State's the team right now that I would like to see out the most. I just think they're going to win out. They're going to be 11-1, and there's 0 chance if they're ranked 4 that they're going to drop them out. That's just what I think they won't. I just don't think they'll do it. But I agree with you 100% that I think they should not be. I think they're the most overrated team. They don't deserve to be in the top 12. They've beaten fucking nobody, and James Franklin's a fucking idiot.
Bowling Green by 1 touchdown.
Almost lost.
They blew out Illinois, who was overrated at the time. USC, they won in overtime by 3.
Yep.
They lost to Ohio State by 7. Yeah, they blew out Purdue and Washington, who are both garbage this year, and then they finished the year with Minnesota and Maryland. So they'll end up playing 2 ranked games.
Yep.
One of which won't be ranked at the end of the year. Like, what did you didn't do anything.
You did nothing. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it's garbage that they're ranked where they are. And I think that's what a lot of people have a problem with is like you just in the Big Ten this year, if you don't like you can play one tough game and lose and then just get in because you beat a bunch of bum teams. It's like if you take any of the top 7, like take A&M, who's on the outside looking in, and you put them in the Big Ten and give them Indiana or Penn State's schedule, they're 11-1, 100 out of 100 times. Like they're in the playoffs. So that's the frustrating thing for people from the SEC. And then the other side is like they're like, well, we don't want to just see all the SEC teams in the playoffs. That's boring. It's like I agree with you, but it's like I also don't want bad teams who don't deserve to be there in the playoff just because they don't play anyone. So tough to decide here, but that was a good discussion to kind of get through it. We kind of touched on the Indiana game.
One last point on
go ahead before we wrap it up. Go ahead.
Why are current sitting ADs and coaches on the college football selection committee?
It's a great point.
We don't have to talk about it. Just that's ridiculous. The Michigan AD is on the committee. I think he's like the chair or something. Like
it's fucking nuts. It's
I could see if there's a discussion about letting 4 Big Ten teams in, and he's sitting there. He's like, "Yep, give them all to me," because that makes his conference look even better.
It's crazy that they do that. That's nuts.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, even I think they talked about like last year. I want to say the AD of NC State was on the committee, and it was like
still is.
Yeah, and he was like, they were like, well, of course, like they hate Florida State. Like, of course he doesn't want them in. Like, I don't know. It's I agree. Like, it's just so incestual. Like, they just they put people in there they want to be able to control or something. I don't know. It's just I agree. Like, there should be no current. You want to put like former
coaches, maybe former players turned like analysts or something.
Right.
Maybe former, I don't know, coordinators or something.
Yeah. I would like to get the perspective of. No, I agree. I would like to get like everybody's perspective, like a couple of former assistant coaches, a couple former head coaches, a couple former ADs, and then also like my understanding, and I could be wrong about this. My understanding is a lot of people don't want to do it because it's a lot of time and they don't really like get paid anything. It's like why don't you just like you make the college football playoff makes so much money. Why don't they just like pay everybody like a good chunk of money and you get whoever you wanted? Like, hey, here you like we'll give you like $1 million for the year or like $500,000 for the year. You're doing this for X amount of weekends. That's it. And one big final weekend, you're all in person here. Like the rest of them, you can do virtually even, and you make $500,000. Like they would eat. That would be very appealing to anybody, even people with a bunch of money. So I don't know. I agree with you. That's crazy that's the case. So
absurd. Very dirty.
Very, very dirty. Yeah. All right. Well, that will pretty much wrap up our episode here for episode 59. Thank you, Sam, for filling in. Great episode. I'd love to have you back on here soon. But enjoy everything for college football this week. NFL, we got some Thursday night action that we talked about. Also, make sure like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel massively. And also check out our Patreon. I got to post some stuff on there, but just know you're helping the channel if you pay us $5 a month. So we keep it ad-free for everybody who watches. Thank you for the support, and we will catch you guys next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.